ahead.
Yeah, we've talked briefly before. Um, I'm interested to talk about your arguments against agnosticism. So I don't know
Agnosticism
where.
is indirect atheism, sir.
Right. Yes, I understand that that's your view, but I don't agree that your arguments
Wait,
establish that.
did
So
you say agnosticism or not? What did you say?
me?
Agnosticism claims it does not know of any creator God's existence or non-existence. Are we on the same page on that?
Yeah, a person is agnostic if they don't profess to
Okay,
know
now
or believe that God.
Is the Christian God defined as having made himself known?
Yes.
All right. Well, then if it's true that the agnostic does not know of any creator God's existence or non-existence, if that statement is true, then it necessarily follows from that the falsity of Christianity.
Right. So, do you
Then,
agree that someone
then,
can?
do you accept
Sorry. Go
that?
ahead.
Do you accept that? If the
Not
agnostic statement
exactly.
is true, if the agnostic statement is true that he
Right.
does not know of the existence of any creator God's existence or non-existence, then it necessarily follows from that the non-existence of the Christian God.
Right. So, first
Therefore, he
question.
therefore knows that at least one God does not exist, contradicting his original position.
Knowing that at least one God does not exist does not entail atheism,
No,
but that's a separate point.
agnosticism is a universal statement. I do not know of any creator God's existence or non-existence. It's not
That's
saying
not correct.
I don't. Oh, it most certainly is, sir.
That no, it's not correct, but that's actually a bit of a side point. We can come back to that, but can I just ask a question about the first argument you
Well, we're not.
presented?
Well, we haven't finished the issue about agnosticism.
Okay,
It
all right.
is it does. Okay, I'm going to ask you a simple question. Can somebody make an assertion without realizing its implications contradict the assertion?
Of course, you can make a
Okay,
assertion without knowing
so
that
the
its
agnostic
implications.
position thinks that they're not making a declaration about ultimate reality, correct?
Some of them may not, perhaps. Sure.
No, the agnostic position is I do not know whether a creator God exists or does not exist. That's a reference to ultimate reality. I do not know whether there is or is not ultimate reality designated as God. Okay, that's the agnostic position. Now,
Yeah.
that if that is a claim that they're not making a statement in any sense about ultimate reality, unfortunately, it is a statement about ultimate reality because it is a knowledge claim made without referencing ultimate reality. So it is a statement about ultimate reality in that ultimate reality need not be stipulated in order to invoke one or more facts.
Right. So this.
Therefore,
Uh,
therefore, on those grounds, agnosticism is a contradiction.
right. So give me a minute here. I think this is a second argument uh, that I've heard you make before. It goes something like, if Christianity is true, then all statements reference God. On agnosticism, not all statements reference God. Then,
No,
therefore,
that's
on
not that's
agnosticism,
incorrect.
Christianity is false.
Agnosticism is the position. Agnosticism is the claim position that one does not make an assertion about what ultimate reality is or is not. The agnostic is claiming, I'm not making a claim about ultimate reality. I'm not making a claim that God exists. I'm not making a claim that God doesn't exist.
Right.
But to say I don't make a claim about ultimate reality is in fact an indirect claim about ultimate reality, because what you're saying is I need not reference God as ultimate reality in order to invoke one or more knowledge statements or facts.
But actually, we went over this on a previous date, right? And I asked the
Mm-hmm.
question, is it possible to reference something without knowing that you're referencing it?
Yes.
And you said yes. So why could the agnostics not say, well, it may be the case that I'm referencing God when I'm making this statement, but I don't know that I'm referencing God.
It doesn't matter that they're confused. What matters are the implications of what they say. Right? Sometimes people, okay, if you look into logic, if you take a course in logic or read a
I've
textbook
taken
on
several.
logic, you'll go through a whole list. Good. You'll read a whole list of formal and informal fallacies. People make stipulations all the time and they don't realize but that the implications that they're fallacious. So the agnostic, right? Okay. Now, the reason why people haven't come to the realization that agnosticism is self-contradiction is because professional philosophers are not including a transcendental view of reality. They're not thinking in terms of the perspective of the creator-creation distinction, right? When they speak of God, they're not speaking of an absolute God. They're speaking of God as a creature, where God is just simply an unembodied mind who's a superpower, right? But if somebody, for example, I had asked yourself saying to me, well, I don't know whether God is the precondition or not. And so I pointed out to him, I say, do you affirm that God is the necessary precondition in order metaphysically to invoke any dependent fact? He said, no. I said, there you go. You're not neutral. You're now claiming indirectly that you can invoke one or more facts on a metaphysical scale without reference to God. In other words, God does not have to be referenced for the actuality or intelligibility of any fact. And
Right.
if you can have
So
a fact, if you can
in
have
that
a
case,
fact,
I would
listen, if you can have a fact without referencing God, then that entails the denial of God's existence.
yes. So actually, on that point, I'm actually going to agree. If you say that I am not referencing God, or that I can make a statement without referencing God, then it follows that this God, or that your conception of God, does not exist. What I'm saying is the agnostic could say instead, as we seem to agree, I don't know if I'm referencing God. I might be referencing God.
No, you're
That
not
that seems to be
understanding.
a coherent position
You're
to
still
take.
you're still not getting it. Okay.
All right. Sorry.
You cannot be neutral about referencing God. It is impossible because God is a worldview. Do you understand?
Okay, this is a third argument, but yeah, okay, go ahead.
Right. Now, God is a worldview. So if somebody says, I don't know whether God exists or not, they're invoking a proposition, a fact, a knowledge statement without reference to God.
How do you know that it's not referencing God?
No, you're not
They
because I'll tell you why. Is because they've already told me that they're not referencing God because they say I don't
right,
know whether God exists or not.
but I'm just saying that
I
they
can
may
I
not
can
say that it's not referencing God.
you're not understanding this because any agnostic I can say is it
Because then they would
net
know.
is it I would all I have to do is say to the agnostic, right? See, you're focusing on what the agnostic thinks. I'm not focusing on
Hmm.
that. I'm
Right.
focusing on the implication of what they
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
not what
No, I
they're
agree.
thinking it means, right?
Right.
Because when people commit logical fallacies, they're not focusing on the actual logical implications of what they say. They're focusing on what they think it means. Now,
Right. No, I agree that we should
all
also focus
okay,
on the
I can
implication.
show you, listen, I can show you with the example with ask yourself. He tried to maintain the same line of reasoning, and I stopped him and I said, do you affirm that God is the necessary precondition for the viability, existence, and intelligibility of any singular fact? I said, do you assert that? He said, no. There it is. It's game over. You're now saying that you can invoke an intelligible, viable fact without specifically referencing God.
That seems to be a bit of a jump there, right?
No, it's
Because
not a
I may
jump at
say that I'm
all.
not
You're
explicitly
not
assert. Sorry,
understanding
go ahead.
because it has to do with the law of excluded middle. Okay. Do you
He's
understand?
referencing something.
You're a fact will be viable either with God or without God. Now, if you can invoke a fact on a metaphysical scale without referencing God as the precondition, then by virtue of such a statement, you have denied God whether you think you have or not.
Right. So I agree, right, that if someone says, I can make a statement without referencing God, I agree that that entails that God does not exist, or it entails that they should believe that God does not exist. But what I'm disagreeing is that that's the position the agnostic has to take. The
No,
agnostic could
because
say,
there's you can't. There's no middle ground. It's called the law of excluded middle. Why do you think it's
right, but this
called excluded middle?
because there's no middle. But sorry, how does that
That
apply in beliefs here?
because a fact either references God or it doesn't.
Right, but that doesn't mean we have to believe that it references God or believe that it
You're
doesn't
not
reference God.
understanding.
That's
Again, you're not understanding. You're focusing on what the agnostic thinks. You're not
no, I
focusing on the
agree. We
implication.
can focus on the implications. I'm
Right.
agreeing with
Okay,
that.
listen. The agnostic, all I have to do, this is what I did, and I'll repeat it again with ask yourself. He tried the same line of reasoning. He kept on focusing on his intentions. But I'm not asserting there is no God. That's right. You're not directly doing it, but you're indirectly denying God because you're claiming that you can invoke a fact without specifically necessitating that God is the precondition of that fact. If you can say,
If he's
all,
doing that, I agree with you.
every agnostic
Right. If
does it,
he's doing that,
sir.
I agree. You're right.
Every
But no, I'm
agnostic
not.
does it.
That's what I'm disagreeing. I'm disagreeing on
You're
that
not.
point. The agnostic does not have to do that.
No, the agnostic
Can I
does because
clarify?
you know why? I'll tell you why they do. Okay, because
All right.
do they categorically affirm and assert that God is a necessary precondition for the intelligibility of facts? The answer is no.
Right.
And if it's no, then they're invoking a fact without referencing God. If you invoke
That
a
doesn't
fact,
follow.
no, it does follow, sir, because a fact will either reference God or it won't. Either
All right. Can I
God
just
is
have a minute to explain?
necessary. All right, listen. No, I'm done. You're not getting this. We had the same problem last
I
time.
I actually do get it.
Thank you for your time. Okay, I'm not going to waste my time. You're not getting this. Okay. Anybody have any other questions? You see, either you reference God or you don't. And if it is, if I say, is God necessary to be invoked foundationally for the viability, intelligibility of any given fact, the agnostic will have to say no. If he says, I don't know, then all I have to simply say is, do you affirm the necessity as God as the precondition for any fact? Do you assert that? And if he says no, then he's invoking facts without God.
But
And
Darth,
if you invoke,
To that, what if he says I don't know?
but you're not understanding.
Then
What he's
that's not
not under,
answering the question Darth asked
what,
him.
he, what, he- what he's
But
not
he,
understanding is that the I don't know. Okay, if I say to you, I don't know, is that a statement of fact? Okay.
yeah, it's a statement.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, sure.
then it's a fact that does not necessitate referencing God for its viability and intelligibility. Listen carefully. In a world where God is, all derivational and dependent facts would necessitate referencing God as the precondition. Now, every fact in a world where God exists. So if the agnostic even verbalizes one fact and they do not reference God, right? They say, I can either they can say this directly or they can say it indirectly. If they assert a fact can be presented intelligibly, metaphysically, without referencing God as the necessary precondition, then by virtue of that, they have denied the existence of God. Even though they don't intend to deny the existence of God. They deny the existence of God by invoking a fact that does not reference God as the precondition. Because a fact, whatever it is, will either have God as the precondition or it will not have it as the precondition. And if a single fact does not necessitate God as the precondition, from that it follows the denial of the existence of God. No, you're not going to have another minute. We've been through this before in previous conversations. You're simply not getting it, Destroyer. I don't think you're intellectually capable of understanding it at this point. I've explained it to you over and over and over again. You keep on focusing on the agnostics. Yeah, you've tried to elaborate before. I'm not wasting my time anymore with people who try to defend the agnostic position when it's been explained over and over and over again. You can complain in the text all you want. Okay.
But Darth, I just have one question. Like with many other people you debate, you give them a lot more time to talk than you did Detroit.
Yeah, I've talked with him many times before, and the conversation ends the same way every time. I'm not going to continue to waste my time with him. I've explained this over and over again.
Someone
See, ask
asked.
yourself,
Sorry.
tried to pull this maneuver as well. He keeps on saying, but I'm not denying God. It doesn't matter what you think your intentions are. You are denying God by implication. Okay? Something is a fallacy, whether you intend it to be a fallacy or not. Okay? Something is a fallacy if by implication of its internal context, it's in some way a contradiction, right? Or it doesn't necessarily follow. So the point is simply this: in a world where God exists, all facts would require referencing God for the viability, intelligibility of any fact. So the agnostic says, well, I don't know if God is required or not. They're already that statement is operating without referencing God. Okay? To say, I don't know if God is necessary, that's a knowledge claim, that's a proposition that does not verbalize the necessity of God as the precondition. If you can invoke a fact, whatever it is, that does not necessitate referencing God as the ultimate precondition, then you have denied God.
But if you invoke a fact and say that I might be referencing God, then what?
No, sir. No, you're not understanding. I can just simply say to that person, let's say you're that person.
Yeah.
I could say, do you assert that God is the necessary precondition for any and every fact metaphysically? Do you assert that? The answer will either be yes or no. Saying I don't know is diversionary.
But that's where agnosticism lies in saying
You're
I
not
don't know to that
understanding.
question.
All I have to do is ask the agnostic, do you affirm, do you assert that God is the necessary precondition when you invoke any fact? And the answer out of their mouth will be, no, I do not assert that.
Okay,
Now,
I see what you're
if
saying.
you don't assert that God is the necessary precondition, then you have denied the existence of God indirectly.
Right.
Can I jump in here?
Oh,
Would it be
please
fair
do.
to
Go
say?
ahead.
Would it be fair to say that if they do not assert that God is the necessary precondition, then they are asserting that not God is the necessary precondition? Would that be
No.
fair to say?
No, that's not fair.
Yes, they are. Indirectly, they are.
No, but wouldn't it be fair to say that they're at least not directly affirming that God doesn't
It
exist?
doesn't matter
They're
that
only doing it.
it doesn't matter. Look, if a mother takes her child to a pediatrician and she's the last appointment in the day. By the way, can you guys hear my fan?
No.
No.
Okay. If a mother takes her child to the pediatrician, she's the last appointment of the day, and the doctor comes in and he says, I have to leave in 5 minutes to catch a plane to go to Europe with my family. Do you want your daughter to get the vaccine? And she blabs his ear off. Okay. The doctor looks at his watch. He says, listen, I have 1 minute and 30 seconds left. Do you want your daughter to get the vaccine? I cannot give her the injection without your actual verbal consent. right? So then she
Right.
keeps on blabbing. When the minute and a half are done, he turns and he walks out the door. Has she denied her daughter getting the vaccine? The answer is yes.
But she didn't intend to.
It doesn't matter what her intentions are.
But
So
but hold on, but 1 second, Darth. Isn't there a difference between somebody who intentionally says, I
It
don't want
doesn't
the
matter.
vaccine
You're not
versus that lady?
understanding.
No, but
They
isn't
are
there a
in,
difference?
listen carefully. You're listening carefully. The person who says, I don't know, is intentionally not affirming God as the precondition.
Not not intentionally. It's you said
Yes.
indirectly. You said,
No, you're not understanding, because you see, God is not something that we can be neutral about. If God were simply a creature, right, like aliens, you could be neutral about it. All right. Either God, either somebody's direct or indirect line of reasoning will affirm the necessity of God as the precondition of facts, or their position will deny it directly or indirectly. It makes no difference whether the denial is indirect or that they don't intend to.
but it's that's where the difference is, though, isn't it?
You're not getting this. You're walking down the sidewalk. A guy jumps out from an alley. He pulls out a Glock and he puts it to your forehead and he says, "Give me the wallet, or I'm going to blow your head off." Okay? Reach into your pocket, right? And you say, "Well, I perfectly intend to give you my wallet." And then you just start talking. He says, "If you don't give me the wallet in 5 seconds, I'm going to blow your head off." Okay, well, I'm going to give you my wallet, but first you should know that I'm the man. Boom, you're dead. Okay? There are some things that you cannot be neutral about.
what if if
I like the
somebody
example of someone in a lifeboat at sea who's or is floating. I remember that one that you gave. Somebody's on an inner tube, shipwrecked at sea, and the lifeguard comes and puts their hand out and says, "Take my hand, and I'll rescue you." Do you remember that one?
That was in reference to discussion on Calvinism.
But
Oh.
okay, one second, Darth. But there is a difference, you admit, right, between a lady that says, I don't want the vaccine, versus another lady who just keeps blabbing. There's a difference between them inherently. There is a clear difference. One directly
You're confusing you're confusing direct and indirect. Is there a difference between direct and indirect? Yes.
there
But
is.
it amounts to the same thing, sir.
No, I agree with you. I 100% agree with you. But all I'm saying is that's where the distinction lies when people say I'm agnostic. They don't directly.
Understanding. Listen, you're not understanding because you're not looking at this from a transcendental perspective. If you do not look at a set of facts from a certain perspective, you can come to the wrong conclusion, right? Now,
could I
God in a world, listen, God is either the precondition of all facts or God is not the precondition of
I agree
all
with that.
facts.
I agree with that.
When I ask the agnostic, do you assert that God is the precondition of all facts? If the agnostic says, no, I do not assert that, then that is an indirect denial.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Good,
100%
game
agree
over.
with you. No, but it's not game over. Hold on one second.
Thank you for your time. Okay. Yeah. Another stuck on stupid person. Maybe it's communicable.